Alright, so I'm going to attempt to review this entire vehicle in the next 5 minutes, so let's start the clock and get started. Okay, so this is the 2019 Infiniti QX80. It's a full-size luxury SUV that seats 7 and MSRPs for around $65,000. This right here is the base model, so it doesn't include all-wheel drive, but it's got plenty of bells and whistles for us to talk about. Let's start out under the hood. We get a 5.6-liter V8 engine with a 7-speed automatic transmission. You get yourself 400 horsepower and 14 miles per gallon in the city, 20 on the highway with a 26-gallon fuel tank. Not bad. Nissan, well, Infiniti, recommends that you put in premium fuel into the QX80, but I used regular unleaded and I didn't notice any issues with performance. So what's it like to drive? Handling is comfortable and responsive, and it's surprisingly easy to park, especially when you use all the fancy driver assist technology. You even get camera angles on all sides of the vehicle, which is pretty cool. Acceleration is smooth and strong, and the engine sounds just fantastic. The hum it makes when you really hit that accelerator hard is pretty satisfying. Cabin noise is also fairly decent, although I did have to bump up the volume just a little bit on my audiobooks when I hit about 70 miles per hour, but that's not too bad. Alright, let's jump inside. Here's the key fob. It's a small oval shape made out of light plastic. Standard buttons on here, including remote start right on the top. You get a push-button start on this vehicle with a beautiful gauge cluster that's accented in blue. Nothing real special here, but it is worth noting that the screen here is kind of small and doesn't include a whole lot of information about the vehicle. Also, to interact with this screen, you're going to have to reach around the steering wheel, which is kind of awkward, and push these buttons right here. The steering wheel, speaking of, has all the standard buttons on it. On the left-hand side, we get buttons to interact with the center display, which is a touchscreen that I'll go over in a second. And on the right-hand side, you get your cruise controls, including adaptive cruise, which is fun to play with. On the left-hand side, you get all your standard buttons, including memory seat buttons and controls for the heated steering wheel down here on the dash. Side view mirrors are pretty large and include blind side detection. It's just a light that illuminates in orange when someone's in your blind spot. Up top, shifting your gaze up top, you get sunglass holders, standard lights, an SOS button, and controls for the sunroof. Sunroof is a decent size, not huge, but plenty big. The rear view mirror includes programmable buttons for your garage door and an automatic dimming feature. It's always nice to have. The center display, as I mentioned before, is a touchscreen, but you'll probably rarely actually use that capability because there's dedicated buttons for almost every feature on the QX80. Actually, too many in my opinion. Also, no fancy apps here. You just get the basics. You get a nav, a media screen, and climate controls. It's actually a bit boring and slightly disappointing in my opinion. The climate controls are towards the bottom. They work great, but because of the size of the vehicle, it is kind of a challenge to reach these while you're driving. And I noticed that I kind of had to move the gear shift to get access to them. But you do get heated seat controls at the very bottom, a power port, and 2 USB ports here, which is great. Gear shift itself works fine. It includes Sportshift capability, and when you throw it in reverse, you get a rear view camera that pops up with multiple views, including an overhead shot that allows you to see all around the vehicle. There's also plenty of storage up here, including multiple cup holders, a pretty large area under the center armrest, and then an average size glove box. Jumping back into the middle row, there's plenty of legroom back here. You also get climate controls back here with 2 USB ports near the floor and dedicated vents for both of the passengers back here. There's also a large center armrest that includes multiple storage areas, pretty big storage areas actually. But just note that this isn't a fold-up seat. It's actually a dedicated unit that's bolted to the floor. Third row is surprisingly easy to get access to. I was able to do it using a camera and only using one hand. But not a whole lot of legroom back here. I'm 6 feet tall and I just barely fit, but on the plus side there are dedicated vents back here, cup holders, and electronic controls to adjust the seats. Alright, I'm super short on time, but let me see if I can do this. in the back. You get plenty of room with the third row seats up. If you need more room, you can collapse those down. And if you need even more room, you can collapse the middle row seats and get a ton of space back here. My only major criticism is that oh man, I couldn't make it. Alright, so I can't do this in 5 minutes, but at least let me clean things up a bit. Two main complaints back here. One, those electronic controls for the third row seats are ridiculously slow. And two, I'm not a huge fan of having the spare tire underneath the vehicle. It's just too much of a hassle to get access to. Alright, so that's pretty much everything end to end in 5 minutes, which isn't too bad. A lot to talk about on this vehicle, so much so that I couldn't cram it into a 5-minute review, but with that being said, I'm going to give this one 3 stars. Look, this is a great SUV, but for the cost, I'm just not sure it's enough for me, especially considering this is basically just a Nissan Armada with a couple of bells and whistles added to it. That's me, though. If you feel differently, please leave a comment below and let me know what you think. That's it for now. Thanks so much. I hope you join me next time when I attempt to review a car in less than 5 minutes. I'll see you then.